Hey guys, and welcome back to the channel, and in today's video I'm going to be giving you my review of the Thorpe Park 2025 season. In this video I'm going to be giving you my overall thoughts, and I'm going to be going into detail about things that I liked and things that I didn't like. So let's get right into it, starting with my overall thoughts of the season. This season I thought was a average season for Thorpe Park. There wasn't very many events or special things going on at Thorpe Park as much as we liked last year. That they had Oktoberfest, I think they had years gone past, they had Carnival, they had loads of events going on, and this year they didn't have any of that, and I feel like that lacked and showed a lot over the park. I feel like events really do give a park more reasons going back to a park, but I felt like it didn't have as much atmosphere as it did last year or the year before that, where they did have all these events going on. However, I do think that this season was still a good season. I feel like the operations there were very good, besides Stealth, which was obviously having a lot of issues this season, especially Hyperia. That didn't have anywhere near as much downtime as it did have last year, which is really good to see. I also feel as if other operations across the park were very good as well. A lot of the food places, unlike other Merlin parks, were open. I felt like when I was at Chessington and Alton Towers and Legoland, a lot of the kind of food places were closed, whereas at Thorpe Park, a lot of them were open and operational, which was really good to see. I also thought that Fright Nights this year was a very solid year. As much as they didn't add anything new for the year, I did think that everything that they did have and everything that they built on was really good. And you can check out my other video on the channel for a more in-depth review of Thorpe Park Fright Nights, which I'll leave a thing for in the top right for you guys. But moving on, overall I felt that this year, there was a lot of wanting other stuff for me this year. I felt like Thorpe Park was so good at doing these events like Oktoberfest and Carnival that this year it really lacked that for me. I felt like there wasn't as much to do throughout the year this year, whereas last year I was loving the fact I could go 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 times throughout the year and there'd be something different going on and something different to see. Whereas this year I didn't really feel that, and it kind of showed in attendance, as not a lot of the times that I went to Thorpe Park it was extremely busy. The only time it was when I went on Friday during October half term for Fright Nights. That was the only time it was really busy. So yeah, I felt like attendance was impacted by not having those events, as people want a reason to go somewhere. Like Oktoberfest gave people a reason to want to go to Thorpe Park, and it also gave us slightly longer opening hours, which gave us more rides in the dark, which was another thing I wanted to talk about, was operations. It seems like there's been a lot of cutbacks operational wise across Merlin parks, and it felt like you couldn't go, like as a Merlin annual pass holder, I couldn't go as much as I would have wanted to, because days that I was off of work and was able to go, I couldn't go because the park was closed. Especially, I believe, on like Tuesdays it was always closed, which was always a day I normally had off. So yeah, I felt like that was another thing as well that kind of stopped people from wanting to go, was how often it was open. But moving on to something else, which I didn't really talk about in my Chessington review, was the food. Like I said, a lot of the food places were open, and a lot of it was like very expensive, I want to say, for theme park food. Whereas your likes of your Burger King, your KFC, they were always like the normal kind of pricing you would expect, which is why I think Thorpe Park's food stands out from other Merlin parks, is purely because they have the KFC and the Burger King, which are always quite affordable. Now, don't get me wrong, they're still not cheap by any stretch of the imagination, but it's a lot better than paying £15-16 for the same level of food, or the same amount of food that you would at, I don't know, for example, the Smokehouse at Chessington, or the Oaken Star Tavern, or I might have got that wrong, but the Oaken Chain, at Alton Towers. They're both very similar to KFC and Burger King in the fact that they're sit-down restaurants. And I just felt like it was a lot cheaper to buy food, but it still wasn't as cheap as you would want it to be. I also felt like Thorpe Park has a wide variety of food, but again, a lot of the variety of that food was through Arrowmart, which obviously is very very expensive and very hit or miss in terms of food, as I have seen a couple of images online throughout the year of people's food not being the best. But yeah, I just thought that food this year could have been a bit better in my opinion, but obviously you've still got your standouts like KFC and Burger King. Moving on to the rides and attractions, I thought they all looked very fresh and very vibrant, especially Stealth, that looked good this year. Hyperia's area still looked very good and well looked after. Saw the Ride looks very good and refreshed. Colossus's repaint for this season. Obviously, they'll finish the rest of it in this close season, but it does look really good to the eye now. It doesn't look as dirty and grimy now, which is really refreshing to see. And I hope that they do a bit of touch work on other parts of the theming as well and add a few bits. Because one of the staples for me was always of Colossus was the fact that there was water underneath, and they haven't had that for a while. So I'm hoping that does return. Moving on to other things, the Swarm looked really good as well. And it leads me on to another thing, which was operations, which unlike what I saw at Alton Towers and Chessington this year, operations were very good at Thorpe Park. I didn't really queue much for any of the rides. When it was busy, the queues were about an hour and a bit, an hour and 10, which isn't too bad when you go during peak times. Whereas other parks, they were having like 90, 100-minute waits. Whereas Thorpe Park kind of didn't feel like that, and that really did show in the operations because they were really trying to get through as many people as they can, which is really good to see. Another thing I want to talk about is merchandise for this year. Thorpe Park always have absolutely amazing merchandise, and it really does show throughout the year when you have all the events, because they used to do lots of merch for like the events. So like Fright Nights this year, they had a lot of like merch. They had a t-shirt, they had a hoodie, they had like magnets, pins for all the mazes. And this year I think it lacked a little bit for me, just because they didn't have the other events to like bolster the merch. But I do think the merch that they do have is really sleek and modern, and you, as a normal guest rather than a theme park enthusiast like myself, I can see that like it appeals to a more wide audience. Like you still have your like theme park merch, so to speak, so you still got all your like ride hoodies and t-shirts and stuff like that, but they've also got some nice generic kind of Thorpe Park merchandise for like normal people that are visiting, which is really good to see. Another thing I want to touch on in terms of for Thorpe Park in this review is the future for Thorpe Park. I do think that they still need a like standout family ride or area. I feel like when they've lost Loggers Leap and they've lost a lot of the other kind of kids rides now, the Rapids is seasonal and the Teacups is kind of a little bit worse for wear now, and the bumper cars are as well. I feel like they just need like a solid family ride, and I feel like the island behind the Swarm would be really good for the obvious RMC or Intamin Blitz or Intamin Multi-Launch Coaster, anything like that. But I also feel like just a family launch coaster or a family kind of area would be really good to see. Not like kids, not like Legoland or not like Legoland or anything like that, but more like something that's more catered to everyone. A bit like the Curse of the Werewolf for Epic Universe, where you know you've got this like thrilling family coaster, and then a couple of like other things that kids can do, because at the moment it is very much catered towards that teenager adult demographic, which there's something wrong with. I just feel like if you're going to go as a family, you're better off going to the likes of Alton Towers or Chessington, whereas if Thorpe Park were to get that family area, it would help them out a lot. But in terms of the other things I want to see, like little things I want to see, is that I do want to see Darren Brown's Ghost Train, or Ghost Train as it's called now, closed, and I want them to really gut that thing out and build a whole new like dark ride. I think that would be really good and a really good investment for Thorpe Park, as they don't really have any dark rides, and it'd be really good to see that take place there, because then it brings in another kind of thing for people to do. Because I always miss out on Darren Brown's Ghost Train, or Ghost Train as it is now, because it is, in my opinion, a very weak attraction. I know that the actors in there do a very good job and the storyline is there, but I just don't feel like it's worth the wait times that it does get. Another thing I want to touch on is also just general cleanliness of the park. This year was very good. Not at one point did I think it was dirty in any way or grimy. The only thing I would say is that the beach area, that doesn't look the best, purely just because of they're planning on building a whole new stage and events area there, which is good to see because it does mean that they want to be hosting more events and doing more events in the future. It just didn't look the best when you were walking in and you could see it, but that was the only thing I could really pick up on. Another thing for me as well is the overall atmosphere felt really good this year. It didn't feel like there was a load of negativity, which is what I kind of felt not every time I went to Chessington, but quite a few times. It was that there wasn't as much to do there, and people were frustrated that things weren't open or they were closed, whereas I didn't feel the case at Thorpe Park, which was really good to see. That's kind of my in-depth thoughts and feelings on this season at Thorpe Park. I think it was a good year for Thorpe Park, but nowhere near a standout like when Hyperia opened last year. Was it last year or the year before? I can't quite remember. I think it was last year. But I don't feel like it was like that, or it wasn't at the peak of like when the Swarm opened. I just feel like it was a good year for them, but for next year I just feel like they need to add some more events to make it a really standout year next year. But that leads me on to say that if you guys have enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe, as it greatly helps me out and it is greatly appreciated. And please stay tuned for other videos on the channel. We've got quite a few coming up, and also we're going to be going to loads of the seasonal events at Merlin Park. So you've got Legoland, Chessington, and we'll also be going to some other like light walks. So we've got Colchester Zoo lined up for their illuminated light walk, and also potentially Port Lim as well. So stay tuned for all of that. And until the next video, goodbye.